I'm Ranger Sarah, and I've spent years patrolling Shadow Woods, a sprawling forest known for its dense canopies and haunting beauty. Nestled deep in the heart of the mountains, this place was a refuge for wildlife and adventurers alike. But whispers of something darker lived among the trees, an old legend of the echo, a spirit said to mimic the voices of those who have been lost to the woods. The stories are chilling. Hikers who ventured too far often returned with tales of hearing their loved ones calling for help, only to find that the voices led them deeper into the shadows. Many believed the echo fed on their grief, drawing them into its realm, never to return. Though I didn't subscribe to such legends, I couldn't deny the eerie sensations that sometimes crept in as night fell. One brisk autumn evening, I began my routine patrol just before sunset. The forest was quiet, the air crisp and filled with the earthy scent of fallen leaves. As the sun dipped behind the hills, I felt a familiar unease settle in, the shadows growing longer and deeper. Armed with my flashlight and radio, I set out along the winding trail. As twilight enveloped the woods, I reached an old camping ground where many had shared stories of the echo. I stopped to check the fire pit when I heard it, a faint whisper, barely audible like the rustling of leaves. "Sarah, help me." My heart skipped a beat. I turned, expecting to see someone behind me, but the area was empty, cloaked in darkness. "Hello?" I called out, my voice echoing off the trees. The only response was silence. Shaking off the chill that crawled up my spine, I resumed my patrol, but the whispers followed, growing more distinct. "Sarah, please, I need you." The sound was agonizingly familiar, and dread settled deep in my stomach. It was my sister's voice. She had gone missing during a hike years ago, and despite extensive searches, she had never been found. I had spent countless nights wondering what had happened to her. "Jessica?" I whispered, my voice trembling. "Is that you? Help me, I'm lost." The whisper was urgent, filled with despair, and I felt an overwhelming compulsion to follow it. "Please, Sarah, help me." Before I knew it, my legs were moving, drawn deeper into the forest. The path twisted and turned, and the trees loomed over me like ancient guardians, their branches swaying in the wind. The air grew colder, wrapping around me like a shroud as the whispers continued to beckon. "Where are you?" I called, panic creeping in. "I'm coming! Just hold on." As I pressed forward, I reached a clearing I had never seen before. The moonlight spilled across the ground, illuminating a massive tree at its center. Its trunk was gnarled and twisted, and a sense of foreboding washed over me. "Jessica!" I shouted, hoping to draw her out. "I'm here!" The whispers turned to wails, echoing around me, swirling through the trees. "Sarah! Please!" I could feel my heart pounding in my chest, and the urge to flee clawed at me. But I couldn't abandon her, not again. I took a step closer to the tree, and as I did, a shadow flitted past, momentarily blocking the moonlight. "Who's there?" I yelled, fear tightening my throat. The air crackled with energy, and suddenly the whispers coalesced into a cacophony of voices, all pleading, all desperate. "Help us! We're lost! Find us!" My mind raced, and I took a step back. This wasn't just Jessica, it was the echo, luring me deeper into its web. "I can't help you," I shouted, the desperation in my voice echoing through the clearing. But the voices only grew louder, drowning out my thoughts. "Sarah! Help us! Don't leave us!" In that moment, I felt a pull, an invisible thread drawing me toward the massive tree. The whispers morphed into something more sinister, a low growl vibrating through the ground. "Join us." I turned to run, the panic surging within me. But the shadows shifted, blocking my path. I could feel the weight of the echo pressing down, trying to snatch me into the darkness. "You cannot escape!" I fought against the pull, focusing on my sister's face, the laughter we once shared. "I'm not leaving you. I'm coming!" I screamed, the echoes of her voice mingling with the malevolent whispers surrounding me. I darted toward the edge of the clearing, the shadows clawing at my legs. I could feel the echo's presence, a dark figure lurking just beyond my vision. "Stay with us. Become one with the woods." "Never," I yelled, pushing through the thorns and branches that reached for me. I sprinted back down the path, the cacophony of voices growing fainter behind me, but I could still feel their eyes on me, watching as I fled. When I burst back onto the main trail, I didn't stop running until I reached my truck. Heart racing, I slammed the door shut and locked it, gasping for breath. The forest was silent again, but I could still hear the echoes whispering in my mind. That night, sleep evaded me. I replayed the encounter over and over, wondering if I had truly heard Jessica's voice or if it had all been a trick of the woods. The next day, I returned to the ranger station, determined to share my experience. My colleagues listened, some with skepticism, others with concern. They reminded me of the dangers of the woods, how easy it was to let fear and grief cloud judgment, but I knew what I had experienced was real. Weeks passed, and I continued my patrols, always vigilant for the whispers of the echo. But as autumn deepened, I found myself haunted by the memory of Jessica's voice, the ache of loss never far from the surface. One evening, I made a decision. I would return to the clearing, face the echo, and confront whatever it was that had drawn me in. With my heart pounding in my chest, I set out under the light of the full moon, armed with a flashlight and determination. When I reached the clearing, the air felt electric, charged with a palpable energy. The massive tree stood before me, its gnarled branches reaching out like twisted fingers. I took a deep breath and stepped forward, prepared to face the darkness. "Show yourself," I shouted, my voice echoing through the clearing. "I know what you are." The air thickened and the whispers began to swirl around me, rising in intensity. "Join us! Help us!" "No," I cried, grounding myself in my memories of Jessica, the laughter, the love we shared. "I won't be your victim." The shadows shifted and I felt a cold wind brush against my skin. Then from the darkness, a figure emerged. It was Jessica, but her eyes were hollow, devoid of life. "Help me, Sarah," she whispered, her voice a haunting echo. "No," I screamed, the realization crashing over me. This wasn't my sister. It was the echo, taking on her form to lure me in. "You're not my sister." The figure shimmered, the darkness swirling around it like smoke. "You cannot resist. Get away from me," I shouted, feeling the power of my love for Jessica surging within me. "You will not take me." With a surge of determination, I turned and ran, crashing through the underbrush. The whispers erupted into a chaotic symphony, but I pushed forward, the light of my flashlight cutting through the darkness. I didn't stop until I burst back onto the main trail, gasping for breath, heart pounding in my chest. The echo's whispers faded behind me, and the night grew quiet once more. As I stood there, trembling, I realized the power of love and memory. I had faced the darkness and survived, refusing to let the echo claim me. I returned to the ranger station, knowing that I would share my experience with others, warning them of the dangers that lay in Shadow Woods. The spirit of the echo would remain, lurking in the shadows, but I would no longer fear it. I had faced my past and emerged stronger, a guardian of the woods, ready to protect others from the echoes that sought to ensnare them. Story the end.
Story number 2.
I'm Ranger Tom, a veteran park ranger and park ranger in Blackstone Ridge, a place known for its breathtaking vistas and dense forests. But beneath its beauty lies an unsettling history, a ghost story passed down through generations about a specter that haunts these woods, luring the unwary to their doom. The legend speaks of a ranger who disappeared decades ago. His name was Caleb, a dedicated man who knew every trail like the back of his hand. One fateful night, he ventured into the woods and never returned. Search parties scoured the area for weeks, but Caleb was gone, leaving only echoes of his last radio transmission. "I've found something. It's watching me." Every year since, campers and hikers have reported strange occurrences, phantom footsteps, eerie whispers, and the chilling sensation of being watched. Locals avoid the trails after dark, convinced that Caleb's spirit still roams, seeking justice for his untimely end. On a crisp fall evening, I was assigned the night shift, patrolling the forest as the sun dipped below the horizon. The air turned sharp, the kind of cold that gnaws at your bones, and an unsettling quiet settled over the woods. My flashlight flickered as I navigated the narrow paths, the beam of light dancing across the trees. As night fell, I reached a remote area known for its unsettling energy. The wind rustled the leaves, creating a symphony of whispers that sent chills down my spine. It was then that I heard it. A voice carried by the breeze, faint yet unmistakable. "Help me, please." I froze, the hair on my neck standing on end. "Caleb?" I called out, my voice trembling. The woods fell silent. The only sound was my own heartbeat, pounding in my ears. "Is that you? Help me." The voice came again, clearer now, pulling me deeper into the shadows. I felt a mix of fear and an inexplicable urge to follow the sound. What if it really was Caleb, lost and desperate? I moved cautiously, my flashlight illuminating the twisted roots and fallen branches. The voice led me to a small clearing bathed in moonlight. There, I saw a figure standing by a massive tree, its outline barely visible in the dim light. "Caleb?" I shouted, my heart racing. The figure turned slowly, and I felt a chill sweep through me. It was a man, but his face was obscured by shadow, his expression unreadable. "Help me," he whispered, his voice a haunting echo. "I can't find my way home." The sadness in his voice struck a chord deep within me. "What happened to you?" I asked, stepping closer. Where are you? I was taken by something in these woods, he murmured, a deep sorrow lacing his words. I can't escape. It watches me. I glanced around, the hairs on my arms standing on end. What watches you? I asked, dread creeping into my gut. The dark, it knows my name. The man's eyes glimmered with fear as he stepped toward me, and I could see now that his uniform was tattered and worn. You must leave before it comes for you, too. My instincts screamed at me to run, but I couldn't abandon him. I'm a ranger, I said, my voice steady. I can help you. We can find a way out together. No, he shouted, his eyes widening with panic. You don't understand. It's already here. Suddenly, the air turned cold and a deep growl reverberated through the clearing, shaking the ground beneath my feet. Shadows twisted around the trees, forming shapes that lurked just beyond the edge of the light. Run, the man screamed, his voice cracking with terror. I turned to flee, adrenaline pumping through my veins, but as I reached the edge of the clearing, I felt a force pulling me back. No, I shouted, struggling against the unseen grip. The growl intensified, and I caught a glimpse of something moving in the darkness, something large and menacing. It slithered between the trees, a mass of shadow and malice. You cannot escape, it snarled, its voice low and guttural. Help, I screamed, my voice swallowed by the growing chaos. I turned back to the man, but he was gone, replaced by a chilling wind that tore through the clearing. The darkness pressed in around me, clawing at my sanity, and I felt the fear clawing at my throat. With all my strength, I broke free from the unseen grip and sprinted into the woods, branches scratching at my skin as I ran. The shadows swirled behind me, whispering my name, their voices rising in a chorus of dread. You cannot leave us. Join us. I pushed through the underbrush, heart racing, lungs burning, until I burst onto the main trail. The moonlight bathed the path ahead, and I stumbled forward, gasping for breath. The growls faded into the night, but the echoes of the man's desperate plea lingered in my mind. When I finally reached my truck, I slammed the door shut and locked it, shaking uncontrollably. The stillness of the woods pressed in around me, and I realized the danger I had escaped. I called for backup, but I could hardly convey the horror I had encountered. All I could think of was the man, the lost ranger, trapped in the shadows of Blackstone Ridge. The following days were a blur of unease. I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched, and every whisper of the wind sent shivers down my spine. I scoured the area, searching for any sign of Caleb or the creature that had haunted us both. Weeks turned into months, but my obsession with the forest grew. I spent every free moment researching the history of Blackstone Ridge, poring over old maps and ranger logs. I learned that Caleb had been searching for a group of missing hikers the night he disappeared. They were never found either. Driven by a mix of grief and guilt, I returned to the clearing one stormy night, determined to confront the darkness that lurked within. Lightning illuminated the trees as I stepped into the clearing, the air charged with electricity. Caleb, I called, my voice echoing in the thunderous silence. I'm here. I know what happened to you. The wind howled, and shadows danced at the edge of the clearing. Help us, came the haunting whispers swirling around me. You shouldn't have come back. I'm not afraid, I shouted, defiance rising within me. I'm here to set you free. A low growl echoed from the darkness, and I felt the familiar weight of fear settle over me. You cannot save them, a voice snarled, filled with malice. They belong to me now. Release them, I screamed, feeling the surge of courage flow through me. They deserve to find peace. Suddenly, a blinding light erupted from my flashlight, illuminating the shadows. The growl intensified, and I saw it. A massive, dark creature, its eyes glowing with a sinister hunger. It lunged toward me, but I held my ground, the beam of light cutting through the darkness. No, I shouted, pushing back against the fear. You have no power over me. The creature recoiled, the light piercing through the veil of shadows. In that moment, I felt a connection to the lost souls, Caleb and the hikers, filling me with determination. You will not take anyone else. The darkness writhed and twisted, howling in rage as the light engulfed it. The whispers faded, and for the first time, I felt a sense of calm wash over the clearing. As the shadows receded, I could see the figures of Caleb and the lost hikers standing before me, their faces etched with gratitude. Thank you, Caleb whispered, a faint smile gracing his lips. You freed us. With that, they began to dissolve into the light, their spirits finally at rest. The clearing returned to normal, and the oppressive weight lifted, replaced by a serene silence. I stood there, breathing heavily, the night air feeling lighter. The darkness had been vanquished, but the memory of that encounter would forever linger. From that day on, I vowed to share the story of Caleb and the lost souls of Blackstone Ridge, ensuring their memory would live on. The woods still held their secrets, but I was determined to protect those who wandered among the trees, guiding them away from the shadows that sought to claim them.
Story number 3.
I'm Ranger Alex, and I've dedicated my life to protecting the wild beauty of Lonesome Hollow National Park. Nestled between steep cliffs and dense forests, this place has always been a sanctuary for nature lovers. But deep within its heart lies a darker secret, a legend of a restless spirit said to roam the woods at night, searching for something lost long ago. The stories are well known among locals. A young woman named Clara disappeared while hiking one fateful evening. Despite exhaustive searches, her body was never found. Campers and hikers who have ventured near the old cedar grove after dark report hearing her mournful cries echoing through the trees. Many believe she's still searching for her lost love. It was a chilly autumn evening when I began my shift. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows over the rugged terrain. As I prepared for my patrol, I reminded myself to stay vigilant. While I didn't believe in ghosts, the woods could be treacherous at night. With my flashlight in hand, I set out on the familiar trail leading to Cedar Grove. The air grew thick with mist, swirling around me like the memories of those who had wandered these paths before. I pushed down the creeping sense of unease and continued, determined to make my rounds. As I reached the grove, I felt a shift in the atmosphere. The wind rustled the leaves, but there was something different. A whisper, almost like a sigh, carried on the breeze. "Clara," it called, soft and haunting. "Hello?" I shouted, my voice echoing in the stillness. There was no answer, just the sound of my heartbeat pounding in my ears. I scanned the area, the beam of my flashlight cutting through the mist. Nothing seemed out of place, yet an inexplicable sense of dread settled over me. As I turned to leave, I heard it again, a soft sobbing, distant yet palpable. It came from deeper in the grove, and against my better judgment, I moved toward the sound. "Clara? Is that you?" I called out, feeling a strange compulsion to help. The sobbing grew louder, more desperate. "Help me, please. I can't find him." My heart raced. Was it possible? Was the spirit of Clara reaching out to me? I steeled myself, forcing my legs to carry me further into the grove, the shadows growing thicker around me. "Clara?" I called again, my voice trembling. "I'm here to help." Suddenly, the mist thickened, enveloping me in an icy grip. I turned to leave, but the air felt heavy, and I stumbled. When I looked up, a figure emerged from the fog, a young woman, her face pale and her eyes wide with sorrow. She was wearing an old-fashioned dress, tattered and dirt-streaked. "Please," she whispered, her voice like the rustling of leaves. "I need you to help me find him." I took a step back, a chill running down my spine. Who? Who do you need to find?" "Lucas," she breathed, her eyes filling with tears. "He was here. He promised to wait for me. I can't leave without him." The sadness in her voice pierced through me, and despite my instincts urging me to run, I felt an overwhelming urge to help. "Where did you last see him?" I asked, trying to keep my voice steady. "In the clearing," she said, pointing to a spot deep within the grove. "We were going to meet at sunset, but I got lost, and now he's gone." I hesitated, my mind racing. This was no ordinary encounter. Was I really speaking to Clara's spirit, or was this some trick of the woods? Still, I couldn't ignore her plea. "Let's go find him," I said, mustering my courage. Together, we moved through the mist, her figure flickering like a candle in the dark. The deeper we went, the heavier the air became. The whispers grew louder, swirling around us, echoing Clara's desperation. "Lucas, where are you?" she called, her voice trembling with hope and fear. We reached the clearing, a small patch of open ground illuminated by the faint glow of moonlight. But there was no sign of Lucas, only the oppressive silence of the forest. Clara's expression shifted from hope to despair as she looked around. "He should be here," she cried, her voice echoing against the trees. "Clara, it's okay," I said, trying to reassure her. "Maybe he's just a little late. Let's give it a moment." But as the seconds turned into minutes, the feeling of dread crept back. "Clara, I think we should head back," I urged, the urge to flee rising within me. "No," she wailed, the anguish in her voice rising to a crescendo. "I can't leave without him." Just then, the wind picked up, howling through the trees, and I felt the ground tremble beneath us. The shadows around us twisted and writhed, and a deep echoing voice boomed from the darkness. "You cannot take her! She belongs to the woods now." I stumbled back, heart racing. "Clara, we have to go," I shouted, fear gripping me, but she stood rooted to the spot, tears streaming down her face. Lucas, where are you? The shadows coalesced, and I could see the figure of a man materializing within the mist. His face was twisted in anguish, and as he reached out toward Clara, I felt the pull of despair. Come to me, Clara, he called, his voice laced with sorrow. No, I shouted, lunging toward her. Clara, don't. But the spirit of Lucas was too strong. Clara turned, drawn to him like a moth to flame. I'm coming, Lucas, she cried, stepping forward, the fog swallowing her whole. No, I screamed, diving to grab her arm, but I was too late. She vanished into the mist, leaving me standing alone in the clearing, the air thick with sorrow. The whispers around me grew louder, filling my mind with their cries. Join us! Become one with the woods! I turned and ran, crashing through the trees, branches scratching at my face and arms. The shadows chased me, the mournful cries of Clara and Lucas echoing in my ears. Help us! Don't leave us! I burst out of the grove and into the moonlit trail, gasping for breath. I didn't stop running until I reached the ranger station, slamming the door behind me. I collapsed against it, heart pounding, the memories of that night haunting me. The following days were a blur. I shared my experience with my fellow rangers, but they looked at me with skepticism. The legend of Clara and Lucas persisted, and I couldn't shake the feeling that I had failed them. Determined to put the legend to rest, I returned to the grove at dawn. I found the clearing, now bathed in sunlight, but the air was still heavy with sorrow. As I knelt down, I whispered a promise to Clara and Lucas. I'll make sure your story is told. You won't be forgotten. From that day on, I became an advocate for the lost souls of Lonesome Hollow, sharing their story with every visitor who entered the park. Clara and Lucas may be gone, but their love and tragedy would echo through the woods, a reminder of the darkness that lingers just beyond the light. As the sun set each evening, I stood at the edge of the grove, watching the shadows dance and listening for whispers. The legend of Lonesome Hollow lived on, and I was determined to ensure that Clara and Lucas would find peace, even if it meant facing the darkness alone. Story the end.
Story number 4.
As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of crimson and indigo, I, Ranger Mia, set out for my evening patrol in the deep woods of Hollow Creek. This stretch of forest was known for its serene beauty during the day, but as dusk settled, it transformed into a place of whispers and shadows, where the stories of campers lost to the woods lingered like ghosts. Hollow Creek had earned a reputation over the years for its strange occurrences. Campers had reported seeing flickering lights dancing between the trees and eerie voices beckoning them deeper into the woods. I had heard the tales, but had always chalked them up to overactive imaginations. Still, a chill ran down my spine as I ventured further along the narrow path, the darkness thickening around me. Armed with my flashlight and a trusty radio, I moved deeper into the woods, the crunch of leaves beneath my boots, the only sound breaking the silence. As I walked, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched. The trees loomed overhead, their gnarled branches reaching out like skeletal fingers, casting long shadows that danced in the beam of my flashlight. Just as I approached the old campsite, a flicker of light caught my eye. My heart raced. It must be a camper, I thought, excitement mingling with trepidation. I made my way toward the light, careful to stay on the beaten path. As I drew closer, the light began to pulse like a heartbeat, flickering and swaying in the night. I stepped into the clearing and froze. There, standing amongst the trees, was an old lantern, glowing softly in the darkness. The light swayed gently, as if beckoning me closer. "Hello?" I called out, expecting to find someone nearby. But there was no answer, only the whispering wind. I approached the lantern cautiously, feeling the hairs on the back of my neck prickling. The metal was cold to the touch, and as I peered inside, I found it empty. No wick, no flame, just an ethereal glow emanating from its depths. A sense of dread washed over me, and I turned to leave, but the whispers began, soft and coaxing. "Stay. Stay with us. Join us." "Who's there?" I shouted, my voice trembling. "Show yourself." But the only response was the rustle of leaves and the faint echo of laughter, weaving through the trees like a ghostly melody. I backed away slowly, my instincts screaming for me to leave, but my feet felt rooted to the ground. The lantern's glow intensified, casting an otherworldly light across the clearing. "Help us! Help us find our way." The voices grew louder, a cacophony of cries that sent shivers down my spine. I stumbled backward, the ground suddenly feeling unstable beneath me. "Get away from me," I yelled, but the whispers grew insistent. "Join us. Become one with the light. With a surge of adrenaline, I turned and ran, the voices chasing me through the trees. "Mia, don't leave us," they called, but I pushed myself harder, my heart pounding in my chest. I had to escape the allure of the lantern's glow. I darted down the path, branches clawing at my arms and legs as I fought against the darkness. The whispers grew fainter, but they still tugged at my mind, urging me to return. "We need you. Come back." As I broke free from the trees and emerged into a clearing, I stumbled into a forgotten graveyard, ancient headstones jutting from the earth like tombstones of lost memories. The moon hung high above, illuminating the names etched into the stone, each one a reminder of those who had wandered too far and never returned. I felt a sudden chill, the air thickening with the weight of the lost souls that lingered there. The whispers resumed, echoing among the graves. "You're one of us now. Stay with us. Get away from me," I screamed, backing away from the headstones, the fear clawing at my throat. I needed to leave this place, but I felt trapped, caught in the web of their whispers. Then I spotted it, the old lantern, glowing ominously by a large oak tree in the center of the graveyard. The light pulsed rhythmically, as if it had a heartbeat of its own, and I realized it wasn't just a lantern. It was a beacon drawing the lost souls in, trapping them for eternity. Suddenly, a shadow flitted past me, and I turned to see a figure emerge from the darkness. A young woman, her eyes wide with despair. "Please, you have to help us," she cried, her voice breaking. "We can't leave. We followed the lantern. We thought it would lead us home." "Stay away from the light," I shouted, the warning bursting from my lips. "It's a trap." But her expression twisted with confusion and pain. "We can't resist it. It calls to us. Join us." "No," I shouted, fighting against the oppressive pull of the lantern. "You're not lost. You can leave." Just then, the whispers crescendoed into a deafening roar, drowning out my voice. I turned and bolted toward the exit of the graveyard, the shadows closing in around me. "You can't escape," they howled, the darkness reaching for me with skeletal fingers. As I ran, I felt the cold breath of the lost souls on my neck, their desperate cries echoing in my ears. I pushed myself harder, racing through the trees, determined to escape their grasp. Finally, I burst back onto the main path, the moonlight spilling over me like a shield. I didn't stop running until I reached the ranger station, my heart racing and breath coming in ragged gasps. Slamming the door behind me, I leaned against it, trying to catch my breath. The whispers faded into the distance, but the memory of the lantern's glow lingered in my mind, a reminder of the darkness that lay just beyond the light. As I sat there, heart still pounding, I made a promise to myself. I would return to the woods at dawn to ensure no one else would fall prey to the lantern of Hollow Creek. I would warn others, share the stories of those lost to the whispers, and perhaps, in doing so, help free the souls trapped by the glow. And as the first light of dawn broke through the trees, I knew I wouldn't rest until the voices were silenced and the lantern was extinguished for good. Story the end.
Story number 5.
I'm Ranger Tom, and I've spent more than a decade patrolling the sprawling Pine Ridge National Park. Nestled in the heart of the Appalachians, it's a beautiful place known for its stunning vistas and winding trails. But every ranger here knows the stories, the ones about the Watcher, a dark figure said to haunt the woods at night. Campers have gone missing, and those who claim to have seen the Watcher describe a presence that follows you, lurking just beyond your line of sight. It was a crisp autumn evening when I set out for my shift. The sun was just beginning to dip behind the towering trees, casting long shadows across the trail. As I made my rounds, I reminded myself that I wasn't superstitious. Ghosts and legends didn't scare me. I had seen enough to know how easily imagination could conjure fear. But as night fell, an unsettling silence enveloped the woods. The usual chorus of crickets and rustling leaves faded, replaced by an eerie stillness that sent shivers down my spine. My flashlight flickered as I moved deeper into the forest, the beam cutting through the thickening darkness. As I approached an old campsite, I noticed something out of place. A charred log, half buried in the ground, as if someone had recently used it for a fire. I knelt down to inspect it when I heard a twig snap behind me. Instinctively, I turned, shining my flashlight into the shadows. "Hello?" I called out, but the only response was silence. I brushed it off as a deer or some other animal, but unease gnawed at me. Continuing my patrol, I felt the weight of being watched pressing down on me. Every rustle of leaves and creak of branches heightened my senses, and I quickened my pace. I was nearly back to my truck when a flicker of movement caught my eye. It was there, just at the edge of my flashlight's reach, a dark figure standing still among the trees. My heart raced. "Who's there?" I called out, my voice echoing through the stillness. No answer came. I took a step closer, the beam of my flashlight trembling. As I drew nearer, the figure remained motionless, its outline blending into the night. I couldn't make out any features, just an unsettling sense of presence that seemed to suck the warmth from the air around me. "Show yourself!" I shouted, trying to mask my fear with bravado. The figure slowly turned, and in that moment, I felt my blood run cold. The darkness seemed to twist and shift, forming a pair of eyes, glowing, piercing, and filled with an ancient hunger. I stumbled back, my instincts screaming at me to run, but my feet felt glued to the ground. "What do you want?" I managed to choke out, the weight of its gaze pressing down on me. Suddenly, the figure took a step forward and the world around me warped. The trees swayed, the ground shifted beneath my feet. "Join us," it whispered, a voice like the rustling of leaves mixed with the echo of countless lost souls. The moment snapped me back to reality. I turned and ran, crashing through the underbrush, branches clawing at my skin. The whispers chased me, wrapping around me like fog. "You cannot escape." I sprinted toward my truck, my breath coming in ragged gasps. I fumbled for my keys, hands shaking as I finally got the door open. I jumped inside and slammed it shut, locking the doors. My heart thundered in my chest as I looked back toward the woods. The darkness was thick, and I could feel the watcher's presence lingering just beyond the trees. I started the engine and peeled out of the parking area, gravel spraying behind me as I raced down the dirt road. I drove for miles, the adrenaline pumping through my veins, but the sense of being followed didn't dissipate. It was as if the watcher was right there with me, hidden in the shadows. When I finally reached the ranger station, I parked and rushed inside, locking the door behind me. The station was quiet, filled only with the hum of the fluorescent lights. I sat at my desk, trying to shake off the fear that gripped me. That night, I didn't sleep. I kept replaying the encounter in my mind, the glowing eyes, the whispers, and the feeling of something ancient and powerful watching me. As dawn broke, I decided I had to go back. I needed to understand what I had encountered. I returned to Pine Ridge, armed with a group of fellow rangers. As we trekked deeper into the woods, I recounted my experience. They listened intently, a mix of skepticism and concern on their faces. When we reached the old campsite, I felt a chill in the air. The atmosphere was heavy, as if the woods were holding its breath. "This is where I saw it," I said, pointing toward the trees. Suddenly, one of the rangers yelled, "Look!" We turned to see a flicker of light in the distance, glowing just like the lantern I had seen. "It's over there," he exclaimed, running toward it. Before I could stop him, he dashed into the trees, and I heard the whispers begin again, calling out to him. "Come closer. Join us." "No," I shouted, rushing after him, but the air thickened, and it felt like I was moving through molasses. The whispers grew louder, drowning out my voice. "Get back!" I yelled, reaching for him, but it was too late. The figure emerged from the shadows, its eyes glowing fiercely. "You are one of us now." I watched in horror as my fellow ranger froze, captivated by the Watcher. In that moment, I realized the true nature of what we were dealing with. The Watcher wasn't just a specter, it was a collector of souls, drawing in those who wandered too close. Summoning every ounce of strength, I grabbed my friend and pulled him away, tearing him from the Watcher's grip. The air crackled with energy as the figure shrieked, the sound reverberating through the trees. "You cannot take him! He belongs to us!" We stumbled back, the Watcher's form shifting and writhing in the shadows, desperate to reclaim its lost prize. With the rangers at my side, we retreated, the whispers fading behind us. When we finally broke free from the woods, we ran to the truck, hearts pounding. As we drove away, I glanced back at Pine Ridge, a knot of fear and determination twisting in my stomach. I knew the Watcher would still be there, waiting for the next unsuspecting soul to lead astray. From that day on, I became a guardian of the woods. I shared the stories, warned campers, and made sure no one wandered alone at night. The Watcher of Pine Ridge was real, and I had faced it, but I refused to let its darkness claim anyone else. As I patrolled those woods, I always felt the presence of the Watcher lurking in the shadows, its glowing eyes watching, waiting for the next moment of weakness. But I had made it my mission to ensure that no one else would have to face its haunting whispers alone.
Story number 6.
As a park ranger at Pine Hollow, I prided myself on my extensive knowledge of the forest and its secrets. The sprawling trees, towering pines, and hidden trails were all part of my daily routine. But there was one legend that always sent shivers down my spine, The Tale of the Shadows. The locals whispered about a dark figure that haunted the woods, a spirit of vengeance that preyed on those who dared to wander too far from the path. They said it could mimic the voices of loved ones, luring unsuspecting hikers into the depths of the forest, never to be seen again. One misty autumn evening, as I was wrapping up my shift, the sky turned an ominous shade of gray, heavy with the promise of rain. I decided to take a short hike on a trail I rarely used, hoping to clear my mind. As I stepped onto the narrow path, a feeling of unease settled in my stomach. The air felt thick, almost electric, and I couldn't shake the sensation that I was being watched. The deeper I ventured into the woods, the more the trees seemed to close in around me. The shadows stretched and flickered, dancing along the forest floor as the fading light began to cast eerie shapes. I paused, straining to listen to the sounds of the forest. All I could hear was the rustling of leaves and the distant call of a bird. Then, just as I turned to head back, I heard it, a soft whisper, almost melodic, calling my name. "Jack, Jack, come play with us." I froze, my heart pounding in my chest. "Hello," I called out, trying to sound brave, but deep down, a chill ran down my spine. The voice was too sweet, too inviting, and something in my gut told me it was wrong. "Jack, don't you want to play?" The voice echoed through the trees, drifting like smoke in the cool air. "Who's there?" I shouted, trying to maintain my composure. But the only answer was the whisper of the wind through the branches. Against my better judgment, I stepped forward, curiosity getting the better of me. "Show yourself," I demanded, the authority of my ranger status slipping into desperation. The whispering grew louder, a chorus of voices entwined in a haunting melody. "Come closer. We miss you." Suddenly, a shadow darted between the trees, moving too quickly for me to focus on. My instincts kicked in, and I spun on my heel like ready to run. But something compelled me to stay, to see what lay hidden within the shadows. "If you're trying to trick me, it won't work," I shouted defiantly, hoping to ward off whatever was lurking in the darkness. As if in response, the shadows coalesced, forming the vague outline of a figure, a young girl, perhaps 8 or 9 years old, her eyes wide and glistening in the dim light. "Help us, Jack," she said, her voice trembling. "We're lost." "Lost?" I asked, my heart racing. "Who are you? Where are your parents?" The girl stepped closer, her features becoming clearer in the fading light. "They're gone," she whispered, glancing nervously into the trees. "But you can help us find them. Please." The pit in my stomach deepened. Something felt terribly wrong. "What do you mean? Who's with you?" "Just us," she replied, her smile fading. "But we can't leave. The shadows won't let us go." Suddenly, I remembered the stories, the warnings about the shadows. They were known for ensnaring the unwary, using the voices of loved ones to draw them into the darkness. "No," I shouted, taking a step back. "I won't fall for your tricks." But the girl's expression shifted from fear to desperation. "Please, Jack. We need your help." "Stay back," I warned, raising my flashlight to shine directly at her. But as the beam of light hit her, the girl's form flickered and distorted, revealing dark tendrils creeping along her body. In an instant, I realized I was facing something far more sinister than a lost child. The shadows were real, and they were hungry. "Get away from me," I screamed, turning to run, adrenaline surging through my veins. But the forest twisted around me, branches reaching out like skeletal hands, blocking my escape. The voices of the shadows filled the air, growing louder, mocking me with laughter. "You can't escape, Jack. We've been waiting for you." My breath quickened, and I could feel the panic rising in my chest. "Help," I shouted, but my voice felt small against the cacophony of whispers. I stumbled through the underbrush, trying to find my way back to the path, but every turn seemed to lead me deeper into the woods. As I pushed through the trees, I spotted a glimmer of light in the distance. I raced toward it, praying it was the way out. The whispers faded, replaced by the sound of my pounding heart and the rustle of leaves beneath my feet. Finally, I burst into a clearing, and there stood a small, dilapidated cabin, its door creaking on rusted hinges. The light emanating from within flickered like a candle. Without thinking, I bolted inside, slamming the door shut behind me. Inside, the air was stale, and dust danced in the light. Old photographs adorned the walls, families' smiling faces frozen in time. But something felt wrong. The eyes in the pictures seemed to follow me, filled with a deep sorrow. "Help us, Jack," came a voice, barely above a whisper. I turned quickly, heart racing, and saw the girl from the woods standing in the corner, her eyes dark and pleading. "You have to help us. You're our only hope." "No," I yelled, shaking my head. "You're not real. You're just a trick." But the girl stepped closer, and the shadows coalesced around her, taking on the shape of other figures. Adults, children, all looking at me with hollow eyes. "We're trapped, Jack. You have to set us free." Desperation clawed at my chest. I couldn't stay here. I had to find a way out. "How? How can I help?" The girl pointed to a dusty old lantern sitting on the table, its glass cracked and faded. "Light the lantern. It will banish the shadows." I stumbled toward the table, my hands shaking as I fumbled with the matches in my pocket. The voices grew louder, swirling around me, with their cries mixing with the wind outside. "Light it! Light it!" they urged, the urgency palpable. Finally, I struck a match and held it to the lantern's wick. The flame flickered to life, casting a warm glow in the dark cabin. The shadows writhed at the edges of the light, retreating from the lantern's glow. "Hold the light, Jack," the girl urged, her form shimmering in the glow. "Don't let it go out." As I focused on the flame, I could feel a shift in the air. The whispers became frantic, and the figures around me began to dissolve into tendrils of darkness. "No, you can't do this," they cried, but I held the lantern steady, feeling its warmth course through me. With one final burst of light, the lantern illuminated the entire cabin, revealing the darkness that had been hiding in the corners. The shadows shrieked, their forms dissipating into wisps of smoke. The girl's face brightened, her expression filled with hope. "Thank you, Jack," she cried, her voice rising above the chaos. "You've set us free." In an instant, the shadows vanished, and the cabin felt lighter, filled with warmth and light. The girl smiled, and for the first time I saw her as she truly was, a spirit at peace. With a flash, she disappeared, leaving behind a gentle breeze that swept through the cabin. The lantern flickered and then extinguished, but the feeling of warmth lingered. I stumbled outside, gasping for breath, with the moonlight flooding the clearing. The forest felt different now, no longer a place of dread, but a sanctuary. The whispers had faded, replaced by the soft rustle of leaves and the distant call of owls. I made my way back to the ranger station, the night air crisp and refreshing. The shadows of Pine Hollow had been vanquished, but I knew the forest would always hold its secrets. As a ranger, I had a responsibility to protect this land and the spirits within it. And though the legend of the shadows would continue to echo through the trees, I carried with me the knowledge that light could banish darkness, and that sometimes the bravest thing you can do is to confront the unknown. Story the end.
Story number 7.
As a park ranger, my job was to protect and preserve the beauty of the wilderness in Lakeview National Park. But beauty comes with its own set of shadows, shadows that grew longer and darker as night approached. I'd heard the tales, of course, stories of cryptids, mysterious disappearances, and the eerie sounds that echoed through the dense woods after sundown. I never took them seriously, until that fateful night. It was late September, and a thick fog rolled in from the mountains, shrouding the trees in an otherworldly haze. I finished my rounds and decided to head back to the ranger station. But as I drove along the narrow, winding road, something caught my eye. A flickering light danced in the distance, nestled deep within the forest. Curiosity piqued. I parked my truck and grabbed my flashlight. The moment I stepped into the woods, the air shifted. The familiar sounds of chirping crickets and rustling leaves faded into an unnatural silence. My flashlight beam cut through the fog, illuminating twisted branches and gnarled roots. The flickering light beckoned me further into the forest, each step feeling like a descent into a forgotten realm. I trudged deeper, heart pounding, as I approached a clearing. There I found an old lantern perched atop a rotting stump, its flame flickering wildly despite the absence of wind. I looked around, half expecting to find a camper or some other lost soul, but the only thing that met my gaze was the oppressive darkness of the trees encircling the clearing. "Hello?" I called out, my voice echoing into the stillness. "Is anyone there?" No response. Only the crackle of the lantern's flame filled the air. As I stepped closer, I felt an odd chill crawl up my spine. It was as if the forest itself was holding its breath, waiting for something. The hairs on my neck stood on end. Suddenly I heard it, a soft, haunting whisper. "Leave, now." The voice seemed to wrap around me, echoing through the trees. I spun around, shining my flashlight into the darkness, but nothing was there. Panic gripped me, and I turned to leave, but the lantern flickered violently, casting eerie shadows that danced around me. "Get out!" The whisper returned, more urgent this time. I stumbled backward, nearly tripping over the roots. "Who are you?" I shouted, desperation creeping into my voice. From the corner of my eye, I caught a glimpse of movement, a shadow flitting between the trees. I aimed my flashlight in that direction, but all I saw was the fog swirling as if something was just out of reach. My instincts screamed at me to run, but a strange compulsion held me in place. The shadows began to coalesce, taking on a form. A figure emerged, tall and gaunt, shrouded in mist. Its eyes glowed an otherworldly green, piercing through the fog as it stepped closer. "You shouldn't be here," it rasped, its voice a hollow echo of sorrow. "What do you want?" I managed to stammer, my voice trembling. "Help us. Find us." The figure's arms stretched toward me, revealing bony fingers that seemed to reach through the veil of the forest. A surge of empathy hit me. I understood now. This spirit was trapped, longing for release. "Who are you?" I asked, feeling the weight of its sorrow. "We were lost, forgotten." The figure seemed to sway, the fog wrapping around it like a shroud, bound to this place by our pain. Suddenly, memories flooded my mind, images of a family, laughter, love, and then darkness, engulfing everything. I saw the lantern in the clearing, its light representing hope amidst despair. "What happened to you?" I pressed, heart racing. There was a storm, a night like this. We sought shelter but found only the shadows. Our cries went unanswered. Now we are lost, trapped. I felt tears prick my eyes as I realized the weight of their suffering. These spirits were remnants of lives cut short, echoing in the silence of the forest, forever bound to this land. "How can I help you?" I asked, my heart aching with urgency. "Find the lantern, free the light, bring us peace." The figure began to fade, its voice growing fainter. "You hold the key." Before I could react, it disappeared into the fog, leaving me alone in the clearing. The lantern flickered once more, and I knew what I had to do. I grabbed the lantern, clutching it tightly, and turned to leave. But the shadows shifted, and I could hear whispers rising around me, angry and filled with despair. "You cannot leave," they cried, the sound echoing through the trees like a chorus of lament. I sprinted back through the woods, the lantern's light illuminating the path ahead. The whispers intensified, a cacophony of voices pleading, warning, and accusing. "Help us. Find us. Stay with us." As I reached the truck, I slammed the door shut and cranked the engine, the familiar roar a comfort against the growing chaos of the woods. The headlights cut through the fog, illuminating the road ahead. I had to return to the ranger station to find a way to free the spirits. Once inside the station, I frantically searched through old records, piecing together the history of the forest. After hours of research, I uncovered the truth. A family had indeed vanished in the storm decades ago. They had sought shelter, just as the spirit had told me, but they had never been found. I knew what I had to do. With dawn breaking on the horizon, I returned to the clearing with the lantern. As the first rays of sunlight broke through the trees, I placed the lantern on the stump and began to chant the names I'd uncovered, each name a key to unlock their sorrow. James, Clara, Emily, Thomas. I called, feeling the air shift around me. The lantern's flame flickered brightly, responding to the names as if it recognized them. The shadows stirred, swirling around the clearing, coalescing into the figures of the family. They looked at me, their faces filled with gratitude. "Thank you," they whispered in unison, their voices echoing like the soft rustle of leaves. As the light from the lantern enveloped them, the tension in the air dissipated. I watched as they faded into the dawn, finally free from the chains of their past. The forest felt different now, lighter. The oppressive weight of sorrow lifted. I had helped them find peace, but the forest would always hold its mysteries. As I walked back to my truck, I couldn't shake the feeling that the woods would always whisper their secrets to those willing to listen. From that day forward, I respected the shadows and the stories they held. Each time I entered the woods, I remembered the family and their lantern, a symbol of hope in the forgotten corners of the world. And sometimes when the fog rolled in, I could almost hear their whispers again, a gentle reminder of the lives intertwined with the forest's dark beauty. Story the end.
Story number 8.
Being a park ranger in Raven Hollow had its perks. The sprawling trees, babbling brooks, and breathtaking views were all part of my daily routine. But as the saying goes, every paradise has its demons. I had heard the whispers about Raven Hollow, the ghost stories, the local legends of the cryptid known as the Whistler. But I never thought much of it. That is, until I experienced it firsthand. It was a crisp October evening when the sun began to set, casting an orange glow over the forest. I had just finished my patrol and decided to take one last walk along the trails. The air was thick with the scent of pine and damp earth, and the leaves crunched under my boots. I felt a sense of calm wash over me, momentarily pushing aside the tales that had been passed down through generations. But as I ventured deeper into the woods, an unsettling chill crept in. The whispers began to swirl around me, faint at first, but growing louder as I walked. "Help us," they beckoned, a haunting melody that sent shivers down my spine. I shook my head, trying to dismiss the eerie feeling. It was just the wind, I told myself. I continued down the trail, but the whispers intensified, wrapping around me like a shroud. "Turn back." My heart raced. I had to confront whatever was causing this. I knew I should have left, but something compelled me to press on. As twilight descended, the woods transformed. The shadows grew longer, and the air thickened with an unsettling energy. I reached a clearing where the moonlight spilled onto the ground, illuminating an old, dilapidated cabin. Its windows were boarded up, and the wood was rotting, but something about it drew me in. I approached cautiously, curiosity battling my instincts. The moment I stepped inside, the temperature dropped, and the whispers escalated to frantic cries. "Leave, or suffer." I turned to leave, but the door slammed shut behind me, trapping me inside. My heart pounded in my chest as I rushed to the window, only to find it sealed tight. Panic coursed through my veins. "What do you want?" I shouted into the darkness. A figure emerged from the shadows, its form tall and gaunt, draped in tattered clothing that seemed to blend into the shadows. Its face was obscured, but I could feel its gaze piercing through the darkness. "You shouldn't have come here," it rasped, its voice echoing with despair. "Let me out," I demanded, desperately tugging at the door. "What do you want from me?" "Help us. We're trapped." The figure pointed to a corner of the room where a faint glow flickered. I hesitated, glancing back at the door, then at the figure. Something deep inside urged me to investigate. I walked over to the corner, and there I found an old lantern, its flame sputtering weakly. It flickered, illuminating dusty cobwebs and shattered remnants of a life long gone. The air grew heavier as I grasped the lantern, and the whispers surged once more, this time with urgency. "Light the lantern! Set us free!" I took a deep breath and fumbled for matches in my pocket. As I struck one against the rough edge of the lantern, the flame ignited, illuminating the room in a warm glow. The shadows twisted and writhed, and the figure took a step closer, revealing a face that sent chills down my spine. A woman, her eyes filled with sorrow and desperation. "Thank you," she whispered, her voice trembling. "We've been trapped here for too long. The darkness binds us." "What do you mean?" I asked, my heart racing. "How can I help?" "The Whistler, he keeps us here. We were the last to enter this cabin before the storm took our lives. You must break the curse." The lantern's light flickered again, casting long shadows that danced across the walls. I could feel the weight of the past pressing down on me. "How do I break the curse?" I demanded. "Call his name. Confront him. Only then can we find peace." I swallowed hard, the fear coiling in my stomach. "What is his name?" "His name is Elias. He was once a ranger like you, lost in his own darkness. Now he haunts these woods, searching for souls to bind to his torment." As she spoke, the cabin shuddered. And the walls seemed to close in on me. "Elias!" I shouted, my voice trembling. "If you're here, show yourself!" The temperature dropped even further, and a sinister presence enveloped the cabin. The shadows morphed, taking on a menacing form. "You dare call my name?" A voice boomed, reverberating through the walls. The figure of Elias emerged, tall and imposing, his eyes glowing like embers. "You have no right to disturb the peace I have created." "Let them go!" I yelled, gripping the lantern tightly. "They deserve to be free." Elias laughed, a hollow sound that echoed through the cabin. "You think you can challenge me? I was once like you, a protector of these woods. But I fell into darkness. Now you will join me." The shadows surged around me, threatening to consume me whole. The lantern flickered wildly, and I could feel its warmth fading. I focused all my energy on the light, pushing back against the encroaching darkness. "Elias, I won't let you take me," I shouted, defiance surging within me. In that moment, I remembered the faces of the spirits, the families, the lost souls. They needed me to fight. "Elias, you are not a warden. You're just a lost soul like them." The figure paused, uncertainty flickering across his features. The shadows wavered, and for the first time I saw a glimpse of the ranger he once was, a man burdened by his own choices. "Let them go, Elias. Release them from their torment," I pleaded, my voice steadying. He faltered, and I seized the opportunity. "Light of the lantern, illuminate the darkness, break the chains that bind us." I raised the lantern high, its flame roaring to life, casting a brilliant glow that pushed back the shadows. The spirits of the cabin began to swirl around me, their faces alight with hope. "Free us!" they cried in unison, their voices rising in harmony with the flickering flame. Elias recoiled, shadows retreating from the light. No, this is my domain. But the power of the lantern grew stronger, enveloping the room in a warm embrace. The figure of the woman stepped forward, her face glowing with determination. You can find peace, Elias. Let us go. As her words hung in the air, the cabin trembled, and the walls seemed to breathe. You have the power to let go, I shouted, hoping to pierce through the darkness that bound him. With one final anguished roar, the figure of Elias began to dissolve, shadows unraveling like smoke. No, I cannot leave, he screamed, but the light surged, swallowing him whole. And then, silence. The air felt lighter, and the lantern's flame burned steadily. I stood there, breathless, as the spirits faded into the light, their faces filled with gratitude. I stepped outside, the night sky now clear and filled with stars. The whispers had ceased, replaced by the soft rustle of leaves in the gentle breeze. I had confronted the darkness, and in doing so, I had freed the spirits of Raven Hollow. From that day forward, the tales of the Whistler faded, replaced by stories of hope and redemption. I continued my duties as a ranger, forever changed by that night, knowing that the woods held both beauty and darkness, and that sometimes the greatest battles lay in the whispers of the forgotten. Story the end.
Story number 9.
As the last light of day disappeared behind the towering pines, I, Ranger Jake, prepared for my evening shift at the isolated Grayson Woods National Park. This area, once a thriving camping destination, had fallen out of favor in recent years due to a series of strange incidents that led to the disappearance of several campers. People whispered about a cursed section of the forest where eerie sounds echoed through the trees and shadows moved in ways they shouldn't. Despite the warnings, I had always believed the tales to be mere superstition. Yet, as I started my patrol, an uneasy feeling settled in my gut, amplified by the growing darkness that surrounded me. I clicked on my flashlight and ventured down the overgrown path toward the abandoned campsite, an area long deserted due to the unsettling events that had taken place. The trees loomed overhead, their branches weaving a canopy that swallowed the fading light. Each step I took was accompanied by the soft rustle of leaves, the distant hoot of an owl, and the unsettling silence that lay heavy in the air. The campsite was a ghost of its former self. Broken picnic tables and rusty fire pits were all that remained of the laughter and joy that once filled this place. As I approached the fire pit, I noticed something strange, a charred piece of paper fluttering in the breeze. I reached down, my heart racing, and picked it up. It was a page from a journal, stained and torn, but the words were legible. If you hear the whispers, don't follow them. They want to take you to the lost ones. A chill ran down my spine. I tossed the paper aside and scanned the area, the flashlight beam flickering over the remnants of the campsite. Just then, a whisper drifted through the trees, like soft and haunting. Jake, come closer. My blood ran cold. I had heard my name clear as day. I glanced around, searching for the source of the voice, but found only darkness and shadows. Who's there? I called, trying to keep my voice steady. No response came, just the whispering again. Jake, we're waiting. The hairs on my neck stood on end and instinct kicked in. I turned and headed back toward the main trail, but the whispers grew louder, swirling around me. Help us. Don't leave us. I quickened my pace, the flashlight beam bobbing wildly as I navigated through the thickening trees. Get a grip, Jake, I muttered to myself. It's just the wind. But deep down, I knew it wasn't just the wind. I could feel something watching me, lurking just out of sight, and the sense of dread wrapped around me like a shroud. Suddenly, a figure darted between the trees ahead, moving too quickly for me to see clearly. My heart raced as I pointed my flashlight in the direction of the movement. Who's there? Help us, came the voice again, clearer now, a chorus of pleading cries echoing through the trees. I swallowed hard, my instincts screaming to run, but I felt compelled to investigate. Stay back, I shouted into the darkness, my breath coming in short gasps. I'm a ranger. I'm here to help. As I stepped deeper into the woods, the whispers transformed into frantic calls, voices overlapping and blending into a haunting symphony. Jake, please, don't leave us! I stumbled into another clearing, the moonlight breaking through the canopy and illuminating the area. My eyes widened as I took in the sight before me. A group of shadowy figures stood just beyond the light, their faces obscured, but their expressions filled with desperation. Who are you? I called, my voice trembling. We're lost, one of them cried, stepping closer. We can't find our way home. Help us, please. My heart ached at their sorrow, but I felt an undeniable instinct to retreat. I can't help you. I shouted, shaking my head. You need to tell me what happened. The shadows grew closer, their forms shifting and distorting in the flickering light. We were camping, and then it happened. We followed the whispers. They promised us secrets, but they led us astray. Panic surged within me. What whispers? What secrets? They want you too, another figure cried, fear flashing in their eyes. You must join us, Jake. You must listen. No, I shouted, stumbling back. I'm not like you. The air around me crackled with energy, and the whispers escalated into a deafening roar. Join us! Join us! We are the lost ones. I turned to run, the light from my flashlight illuminating the chaos around me. The figures surged forward, their movements frantic and wild, as if the darkness itself was reaching out to claim me. Jake, please! Their voices echoed, intertwining with the wind. I sprinted back through the trees, heart pounding as I fought against the overwhelming urge to listen, to follow. I could hear the sounds of the forest growing louder, the rustling leaves, the snapping of branches, the echoes of their pleas. Help us! Don't leave us! Suddenly, I tripped over a root, falling hard to the ground. I scrambled to my feet, but the shadows were closing in. You can't escape, they shrieked, their voices blending into a cacophony of despair. Desperate, I burst through the tree line, emerging onto the main trail. The moonlight washed over me, and I stumbled to a stop, gasping for breath. I turned back, shining my flashlight into the darkness, but the shadows had receded, the whispers fading into silence. I stood there, trembling, trying to comprehend what had just happened. The air felt different now, lighter, as if a weight had been lifted. But the memory of those pleading voices lingered in my mind, a haunting reminder of the darkness that lurked within the forest. As I made my way back to the ranger station, I felt a sense of resolve settle in. I had escaped the grip of the lost ones, but their story would not be forgotten. I needed to warn others, to ensure that no one else would fall victim to the whispers of Grayson Woods. And as I drove away from the forest, I couldn't shake the feeling that somewhere in the depths of those trees, the shadows still waited, whispering their secrets to the night. Story the end.
Story number 10.
I never believed in the supernatural until I took up my post as a park ranger in the heart of the Smoky Mountains. The job was supposed to be straightforward, overseeing visitors, ensuring their safety, and protecting the natural beauty of the woods. But after a few months, I discovered the dark underbelly of the forest, cryptids and spirits that roamed under the thick canopy, hidden from the unsuspecting public. It was a late autumn evening when my first true encounter began. The sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows through the trees. I had just finished checking the last camping site when I received a radio call from headquarters. Ranger Mark, we've got reports of strange sounds near the old stone cabin. Can you check it out? The old cabin had been abandoned for decades. They said it was haunted. Locals claimed to hear whispers on the wind and see flickering lights from the windows at night. The Park Service marked it off limits, but I figured it was just a story to scare off trespassers. As I made my way toward the cabin, a shiver crept down my spine. The woods were eerily silent, a stark contrast to the lively sounds of nature I was used to. Only my footsteps broke the stillness. I approached the cabin cautiously, the setting sun casting a crimson hue over the trees, as if warning me of what lay ahead. When I reached the cabin, the air felt charged, thick with tension. The old wooden structure loomed before me, covered in moss and ivy, as if nature was reclaiming it. I pushed open the creaky door and stepped inside. The interior was dark and musty, the smell of decaying wood overwhelming. My flashlight beam danced across the walls, revealing faded photographs of a family that once lived there. Suddenly I heard it, a soft whispering. It seemed to emanate from the shadows. I strained to hear, my heart pounding. Get out! Get out! The words chilled me to the bone. I was about to retreat when I noticed something glimmering on the floor. I knelt down, revealing a locket half buried in the dust. I opened it to find a faded picture of a woman. Her eyes were hauntingly familiar, almost as if she were watching me. As I held it, the whispering intensified, drowning out my thoughts. Panic surged through me. I scrambled to my feet and rushed outside, dropping the locket as I went. Outside, the air felt heavier, almost suffocating. I turned back to the cabin, my heart racing. But as I glanced at the door, it slammed shut on its own. I stumbled back, dread washing over me. Something was in there with me. Something I couldn't see. Just then, I heard rustling in the underbrush behind me. I spun around, and there it was, a figure, tall and thin, standing just beyond the trees. Its skin glistened in the fading light, blending with the shadows. It looked like a person, but its limbs were too long, its head too large. My breath hitched in my throat. I was frozen in place, staring into its void-like eyes as it took a step forward. "Help me," it rasped, its voice echoing in the stillness. I stumbled backward, the primal urge to flee clawing at my insides. I turned and ran, adrenaline propelling me through the forest. Branches clawed at my face and arms as I dashed through the underbrush, my heart hammering in my chest. The whispering had returned, now mingling with the sound of my own breath, urging me to look back. But I couldn't. I knew I had to keep moving to escape whatever was hunting me. I finally reached my truck, fumbling for my keys. My hands shook as I started the engine. Just as I was about to pull away, I caught a glimpse of the figure in my rearview mirror. It was standing at the edge of the woods, watching, waiting. I slammed the truck into gear and sped down the gravel road, dust flying behind me. I drove straight to the ranger station, my mind racing. I needed to report this, to warn someone about the cabin, the whispers, the figure. But as I burst into the station, my coworkers looked at me as if I were crazy. "Mark, you okay?" one of them asked, concern etched on their face. I took a deep breath, trying to compose myself. I saw something in the woods. They exchanged glances, their expressions shifting to disbelief. "You must have been spooked by the old tales," another ranger said. "That cabin's been abandoned for years. No one goes there." Frustrated, I explained everything, the whispers, the figure, but my words fell on deaf ears. "Just don't go back there, okay?" they said dismissively. "It's just an old story." But I knew what I had seen. Over the next few weeks, I couldn't shake the feeling of being watched. Every time I stepped into the woods, I felt the weight of unseen eyes on my back. The whispers lingered in my mind, echoing like a broken record. "Get out! Get out!" One night, after closing up the ranger station, I decided to return to the cabin. I was determined to confront whatever haunted it. Armed with a flashlight and a shaky resolve, I made my way back. The moon hung low, illuminating the path before me. As I approached the cabin, the air felt electric. The door was ajar, swaying slightly as if inviting me in. I stepped inside, my flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. The whispers were louder now, swirling around me like a storm. "Help me! Help me!" In a moment of reckless bravery, I called out, "What do you want?" The room grew colder, and the figure appeared again, standing in the corner. "You have what I need," it hissed, pointing to the locket lying on the floor. I swallowed hard, realizing it must be linked to the woman in the picture. "Who are you?" I demanded. "I am lost," it rasped, "and you hold the key." In that instant, everything clicked. I remembered the locket, the way her eyes mirrored the figure's gaze. I dropped to the ground and grabbed it, holding it out like a peace offering. "I found this. Is this what you're looking for?" The figure moved closer, its long fingers reaching for the locket. As it grasped it, a wave of energy pulsed through the cabin. The whispers crescendoed into a deafening roar before suddenly falling silent. The figure's form flickered, and in a blinding flash, I saw the woman from the photograph, standing before me, tears glistening in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered, and then she was gone, leaving only a gentle breeze in her wake. As I stood there, breathless and shaking, the cabin felt different, lighter, almost welcoming. I knew I had freed her spirit, and in doing so, uncovered the truth hidden in the woods. The stories weren't just tales to frighten, they were warnings of what lurked in the shadows, waiting for someone to listen. I left the cabin that night forever changed. No longer was I just a park ranger. I was a guardian of the stories, the mysteries that lay deep within the woods. And as I walked back through the trees, the whispers faded into the rustling leaves, no longer haunting, but a gentle reminder of the thin line between this world and the next. Story the end.